Okay. Well, welcome to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County's Curator's Corner. My name is Thorin Tritter. I am the Museum and Programming Director at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center, which is located in Glen Cove, New York. Before we start, I want to, as always, encourage you to come and visit us in person. Our building is open, so please come and see the objects that have been part of my presentations over the last year and a half or so, and like the one I'm going to be talking about today. So we're open Monday through Friday from 10 to 4:30, and on Saturday and Sunday from noon to 4. So please come by. Also, if you have questions about anything that I say today or about the topic, please use the Q&A feature and put that into your questions into Q&A, and I will respond at the end of the program. Okay, so today I want to focus on this image, a photograph we show in our Liberation Gallery that captures, wow, I don't know why this is doing this. I keep losing the feed. Hopefully you can see me. So this is a photo in our Liberation Gallery that captures a shot of a group of survivors performing in a play in a displaced persons camp, or a DP camp, in 1947. Our caption offers a somewhat broad perspective about these camps, just saying that Jews create communities in DP camps by establishing theaters, schools, fire and police departments, kosher kitchens, synagogues, and adult education courses. We do, however, have much more detail about this photograph in particular. We know, for example, that it captures a theater troupe performing a play at the Feldafing DP camp in 1947. The DP camps were established by the Allies at the end of the war and became centrally important places for Holocaust survivors. You can see a map here that shows how these camps spread throughout Germany and Austria in the Allied occupation zones, and throughout Italy too. The yellow area is the British zone, green French, and you can see blue is American and red is the Soviet zone. These were camps that were administered by the Allies and the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, the UNRRA. They also received support from aid organizations like the Organization for Rehabilitation Through Training, ORT, and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, the Joint. The camps were initially set up to house some of the 11 million people who were displaced from their homes at the end of the war. But those included not only Jewish Holocaust survivors, but also other prisoners of war, released slave laborers, a whole range of different displaced people. But the camps became particularly important for the Jewish survivors of the war who had no homes to return to, who had lost all or many of their family members, and who needed a temporary place to go to wait where they could get approval to move to other countries. Many survivors, of course, wanted to leave Europe, head to Palestine, still under British authority until the formation of the State of Israel in 1948, or to America. But the British and Americans continued to restrict immigration after the war, forcing survivors to remain in the DP camps until they received the necessary approvals. By the middle of 1947, some 250,000 Jews were housed in DP camps awaiting the immigration to another home. While they waited, the survivors started to rebuild their lives in these DP camps, creating flourishing communities out of the remnant of the Jewish population of Europe. I mentioned before that our photograph is from the Feldafing DP camp, which was located in southern Germany in Bavaria, about 20 miles southwest of Munich. It was set up actually in buildings that had been used as a summer camp for the Hitler Youth. But on May 1st, 1945, the US Army established it as a displaced persons camp, primarily to house about 3,000 Hungarian Jews who were refugees, although it also housed non-Jewish concentration camp survivors initially. 3 months after opening, the commander of Feldafing, at the urging of the Army chaplain Abraham Klausner, sent the non-Jewish residents of the camp to other camps and made Feldafing the first DP camp that was exclusively for Jewish concentration camp survivors. In this way, Feldafing became a model for the implementation of a policy that was adopted by the Allies a month or so later after the Harrison Report came out. In June of 1945, Harry Truman commissioned Earl Harrison to tour the DP camps in person and assess if the needs of Jews in the camps were being met. And one of his guides was Rabbi Klausner. Here you see the cover of the report and a statement about its mission. It is in particular about Jewish refugees, the needs of Jewish refugees. Harrison had recently been chosen as the dean of the UPenn Law School in 1945 and had served in several government positions before that, including most recently as the Commissioner of Immigration and Naturalization from 1942 till 1944. So this was an area that he was really quite an expert in. He submitted his report in August of 1945, and it didn't pull any punches. He described the poor living conditions, unheated buildings, barbed wire, the continued reliance on the concentration camp clothing. But he saved his most harsh critiques for some of the text that he wrote. He said, "The first and plainest needs of the people is a recognition of their actual status, and by this I mean their status as Jews. Refusal to recognize the Jews as such has the effect in this situation of closing one's eyes to their former and more barbaric persecution." He closed his report with a stinging jab saying, "We appear to be treating the Jews as the Nazis treated them, except that we don't exterminate them. They are in concentration camps in large numbers under our military guard instead of SS troops. One is led to wonder whether the German people, seeing this, are not supposing that we are following or at least condoning Nazi policy." In the wake of Harrison's report, Truman ordered General Eisenhower to improve the conditions for displaced persons. And on Yom Kippur in 1945, Eisenhower, accompanied by General George S. Patton, visited Feldafing as part of a tour of various camps to see the conditions firsthand. This is a silent movie clip, see if it runs there, showing Eisenhower and Patton as they are visiting Feldafing. You get a sense maybe of some of the buildings and some of the people at the time in 1945. In hindsight, it may seem like visiting on Yom Kippur was rather inconsiderate, as Eisenhower's visit was certainly disruptive to any religious services that were taking place on that day. But maybe he thought that by visiting on Yom Kippur and attending services, religious services at the camp, he would be showing support for the Jewish community. And the response that we have, at least gauged by some of the sources, suggests the residents were certainly appreciative of Eisenhower's visit. I'm going to stop the video and show you this, which is an article written later on by someone who was at the camp at Feldafing when Eisenhower visited. And despite the headline, the article makes clear that Eisenhower visited on Yom Kippur, not Rosh Hashanah. But the writer says, as you can see, that Eisenhower visited and gave a speech. And the speech was full of compassion, full of humanism. Each word, he says, was like balsam to the hearts of the listeners. So apparently the residents of the camp appreciated Eisenhower's visit. The Klausenberger rabbi, or Rebbe, who had survived Auschwitz and then was housed in Feldafing, also offered an account of that visit, saying that when Eisenhower arrived and knocked on his door, the rabbi made the general wait until he had finished his prayers. He later explained it to General Eisenhower, saying, "I was praying before the general of generals, the king of kings, and so the earthly general had to wait." The rabbi then went on to give a sermon as part of the service that Eisenhower attended. And the rabbi talked at length about the conditions that the Jews had endured under the Nazis, but he didn't stop there. He went on to say the Americans and England share in the guilt along with Hitler, because the Americans knew for at least several years about what was happening in the death camps. They could have bombed the places where Jews were being murdered. 1 million Jews, he said, could have been saved, including all the Jews of Hungary. Eisenhower apparently was impressed by the rabbi's leadership and his frankness, and Eisenhower left Feldafing recognizing the need to improve conditions. The US went forward with establishing a range of camps specifically for Jewish Holocaust survivors, along the lines of what already had been done at Feldafing. By 1946, Feldafing was home to about 4,000 Jews, and conditions had improved. Over the following 5 years, the number of residents gradually declined as they moved out of Germany. By 1951, the population was down to about 1,600, and it was finally closed in March of 1953. Our photograph comes from, as I said, 1947, when Feldafing was a vibrant home to thousands of survivors. At the time, Feldafing had both a secular elementary school and high school system, as well as a Talmud Torah, a religious elementary school, a yeshiva for high school age students, and at least 2 seminaries for more advanced Jewish education. The camp also had an elaborate library, several newspapers, an orchestra, and at least 2 theater troupes. The camp was also, just in what it's known for having one of the first Jewish courts. And that court went forward with issuing rulings about the guilt or innocence of several capos who were staying at the camp. And it also led an investigation into the pogroms that had been held in Kelts in 1946, when a mob of Polish soldiers, police officers, and citizens murdered at least 42 Jews who had returned to the city after the end of the war and injured another 40 or 50. Our photograph, though, shows the performance of one of the theater troupes, hinting at the vibrant cultural life that was created in the camp. And in this case, they're performing a version of Tevye the Dairyman, based on the short story by Shalom Aleichem that was later turned into the Broadway musical Fiddler on the Roof. In 1947, there was no such thing as Fiddler on the Roof, but there was wide knowledge of Shalom Aleichem and his stories, particularly those about Tevye the Dairyman. Shalom Aleichem stories and the later adaptation to Fiddler on the Roof, as I'm sure you know, follow the struggles of Tevye as he tried to sustain his Jewish family under Russian rule in Tsarist Russia. The story describes the dangers Jews faced under Russian rule and ends with the Jewish families of the town being forced from their homes. For a group of Holocaust survivors, the story must have had a strong resonance in 1947, but one they did not back away from facing in the DP camp. I really would be interested to know about the discussions that led this troupe to put on Tevye the Dairyman. Perhaps in some ways you can see it as a celebration of Jewish culture and sustaining Jewish heritage in the wake of an effort that was meant to wipe the Jews off the planet. It could also be seen, I think, as a way to draw attention to the long history of anti-Semitism, perhaps placing the Nazis on a timeline of attacks against Jews. Given when it was produced in 1947 in the wake of the war, I tend to think the performance of Tevye was offered as an empowering story about Jewish survival. I'm not exactly sure about the scene that's being captured in this photo. According to my colleague, Avi Markovitz, the Kai Bo Bo in Hebrew or Yiddish may be a sign from a storefront, but to be honest, I'm not exactly sure about that part of the image. We do know, however, about several people in the photo. This woman is Leah Zinger Fisher-Lee, at the time Leah Zinger, who was 21 years old in 1947. She had been born in 1926 in Osmiana, a small town of less than 8,000 residents southeast of Vilnius. Leah's father was an accountant and her mother a wholesale food distributor. She also had a younger brother who was born in 1927. In 1939, Osmiana was occupied by Soviet forces, but in July of 1941, Germany invaded. The Jewish men, including Leah's father, were rounded up and deported. Leah never saw him again. The rest of the family was forced into a ghetto. A year later, in July of 1942, Leah, along with her mother, her brother, and her aunt, were sent to a series of forced labor camps, all located in the general area around Vilnius. By the fourth camp, which was located in Vievis, Leah had gained a reputation for having a lovely singing voice, which helped save her life. In exchange for performing various songs, she and her family were excused from some of the harshest manual labor. At the beginning of 1944, the family was sent from Vievis to a camp of Stutthof near Danzig, about 300 miles to the west. But after only a few months there, Leah was selected for a transport to Bavaria. Her mother managed to get on the same transport by exchanging identities with another prisoner in the camp. However, her brother and her aunt stayed in Stutthof, and actually both later drowned there when there was an evacuation by sea. Leah and her mother were taken to Mühldorf, part of the Dachau camp system near Munich. And it was at Mühldorf that Leah met her future husband, Lako Fischer, a dental technician from Czechoslovakia who'd survived at Auschwitz and was assigned to work with the camp's German dentist in Mühldorf. As the German conditions worsened and the prospect of a Nazi defeat grew, the German dentist overseeing Lako actually encouraged him to escape, giving him a gun and telling him to go. Lako urged Leah to come with him, but she refused and instead stayed with her mother. Lako managed to get away, but Leah stayed in the camp. And this was a life and death decision, really. Leah had a chance to escape from the Nazis, but didn't do it. On the other hand, various studies have shown that survival was much more likely for individuals who were with family members, someone to watch out for them, to be a second set of eyes, or to help at crucial moments. And as it turned out, even though Leah did not escape with Lako, both Leah and her mother survived, and Lako did as well. Only a month or so after Lako had escaped, on May 2nd, 1945, Leah and her mother were liberated by the American Army and sent to Feldafing, where Leah was reunited with Lako, and they were married just 18 months later in November of 1946. This is a picture of the couple about a year after the wedding. Lako taught dentistry at Feldafing. You can see him here with some of the students. That's Lako right there. Leah actually studied with Lako at dentistry, but also performed in one of the theater troupes. On June 22nd, 1949, they left Germany and came to the United States. I've run cold on the rest of their story. There were some references to Leah being an actress here in the United States. I'm not sure more about it, though. We know the names of a couple of the other people in the photograph, but only two of them, and not what they went through. This is Chaim Einhorn and Sonia Flato, both other Holocaust survivors who were friends with Lako and Leah at Feldafing. The key points that I take away from the photo are, first, DP camps like Feldafing were crucial places where survivors made new lives for themselves, finding friends, getting married, and putting the horrors of the Holocaust behind them. Second, the DP camps, although initially created by the Allies, became largely self-run, where Jews were able to make communities and reestablish the Jewish culture that the Nazis had tried to erase. And third, while places like Feldafing were incubators of Jewish life, they were, in the end, temporary, because many Jews no longer wanted to live in Germany or Poland or Russia after their families had been killed and where they knew they remained an undercurrent of anti-Semitism. And so the DP camps filled a need in the wake of the war when survivors had no place to go. But when survivors were able to, they moved out to other countries, to Western Europe, to Israel, South America, and the United States. Okay, I will stop there. This photo, obviously just a tiny portion of our exhibition about displaced persons camps, but even in this one image, I think you can see and learn much about the importance of these places after the war. If you have questions, of course, please type them into the Q&A window. Before I look at those, however, let me share some information about other upcoming programs. Next Wednesday, I'll be back with another Curator's Corner focusing on the anniversary of the liberation of Paris on August 25th, 1944. We have a large photograph from the liberation in our gallery that I want to talk about, and I want to give some background to it. Let me also mention a talk that we have scheduled on September 18th. Sorry, not September 18th, September 14th, sorry, with Professor Leah Garrett, who is going to talk about her new book, Troupe, The Secret Jewish Commandos of World War II, a fabulous book that draws attention to a story that for some reason has not been told before. And one more program to mention: on Wednesday, September 22nd, we are holding a fashion show and a luncheon at the Pine Hollow Club to raise funds to support HMTC's educational and public programs. We have various levels of tickets available, and it should be a lovely event. So I hope you'll consider joining us for that. You can find details about how to buy tickets or some of the other programs in our schedule on our website at www.hmtcli.org, and then click on the events tab. And I also hope you'll go to our website and click on the Give Now button to make a donation to support our online programs. Okay, let's see if there's some questions I can answer. Do you know what other kinds of plays or musicals the theater troupes in the DP camps might have put on? I don't know details about which plays in particular were put on. Yeah, I haven't seen any listing of that, but I think that many of them may well have drawn from the plays that they would have been performing in Poland or in Eastern Europe. So drawing on the Jewish cultural experience, but I don't know in particular about what plays. What happened to the Rebbe? The Rebbe survived. I mean, he's an amazing story, became one of the great leaders of the Hasidim, the Orthodox Hasidic community. He had seen 11 of his family members killed, and one final family member passed away just before liberation, I think it was, or right after liberation even. And he became a great leader of the Hasidic community, eventually coming to the United States and leading the community from here, and is still highly regarded. He's passed away now. I think he died in 1994. Okay, well, thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you at another program soon. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks very much.